Terry, if you'll read the roll call.
Mr. Steiner?
Here.
Mrs. Rourke?
Here.
Mr. White?
Here.
Mr. Whittington?
Here.
Mayor Oringer?
Here. At this time, we'll move into new business. And so today we're here for a special council meeting. We've got a couple of items on our agenda. The first item is a petition for annexation. I'm not going to read the parcel numbers there, but you'll see that in your packet. Jennifer, if you want to lead in, I'll let you give some information, and then we'll look to the developer to give us a little bit of information as well.
All right. Mayor and City Council, a petition for annexation has been received from the property owners of parcel R391019251008. Developer Justin Jackson would like to purchase this parcel for a housing development. Up on the screen there, I have the concept design, kind of illustrating what the proposed housing development would look like. The developer is in attendance at this evening's meeting. He'll talk about the proposed development in more detail and answer any questions that you might have. Just a little background information with annexation. When land is annexed, it is placed in an agricultural district until rezoning occurs. Our code requires a preliminary plat along with a rezoning application. After reviewing the petition for annexation, the City Council will have the opportunity to schedule a public hearing under Minnesota Statutes 414.033 Subdivision 2-3. Notice would then need to be provided to Luray Township and affected landowners 30 days in advance of the hearing. In addition, notice of the proposed ordinance would also need to be published in the city's legal newspaper. When you're contemplating annexation, there's many things you'll want to consider. Among those include how the annexation will affect residents, landowners, and property in the area to be annexed. What additional costs will the city incur when providing services to the annexed area? How much revenue can and will the city obtain through taxes and other charges against the annexed area? What is the present status of the land available in this area and outlook for future development? And what impact, if any, will annexation have on development in this area? We would also need to put together a developer's agreement outlining the responsibilities of both the developer and the city. While it was not required, we did review the petition for annexation with the Planning Commission at their November 15th meeting. And at that meeting, the developer was present to talk about the development, answer questions, and also some property owners directly adjacent to the development were present and distributed a memo to the Planning Commission outlining their concerns, which is included in your packet. And then also there's another memo from Bernie and Pam Davey that they've distributed this evening for your review. So as far as the role of the Planning Commission in the process here, their role is to provide a recommendation as far as it relates to rezoning. But the City Council is charged with considering the petition for annexation and scheduling a public hearing and next steps if there's an interest in considering that. I also included with the information in the packet was an excerpt from the Mankato Area Housing Study for 2020. It talks a little bit about multifamily and the demand and what was needed for the greater Mankato area according to their study. And with that, that's the background information I have. I can turn it over to the developer if you'd like and let him kind of talk about his proposed development in more detail as well as answer any questions you might have.
Oh, before we do that, does the council have any questions in regard to the information in your packet? Just one procedural question that I have at this point, Jennifer. So this petition for annexation, is there a limitation, a time limitation on the amount of time that the city council can take to take action on? Is it a 60-day window on a request like this?
That's typically what is allowed for like conditional use permits, variances. I'm not sure about the annexation. I'd have to research that a little bit further. I don't know right now if there is if
Okay.
that same provision applies, but I will certainly check into that.
No questions from the council at this time? Well then, yeah, we would like to hear from the developer about the proposal, and again, council, kind of be thinking of some of the questions that we can put to Mr. Jackson here as we hear what he has in mind, so I'll turn it over to you.
I guess I just want to stress, it's just a concept plan. Last week, we had a planning commission meeting, and some neighbors did raise some concern. And so I provided them with my phone number, to reach out if they had any ideas, what we could do to work together, make some compromises, I guess. But I did not hear back from them this week. I did realize, Bernie and Pam were most affected, by having this right on their parcel. So I did stop by one day and did speak with them, and we felt like a tree line, like some shrubs, evergreen type thing would be really nice to put, along their property line to the south, and then going up towards the northerly direction to kind of provide a buffer there. The mix here, does show, market rate rents that would, be like workforce type housing, starting, in the $900 range for a 2-bedroom, and then going up to, maybe $1,500 a month type rent. And like I said, I'm willing to work with, the neighbors and try to find a solution that works for everybody. And so this is not set in stone, I would say. And I guess I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the council?
Since I'm kind of new, so I don't know how long it normally takes from, annexation to being able to move dirts and have, lots for available and things like that. Is that kind of a long time frame?
As far as from annexation time to actual time where you would have lots available, I guess that would be, something that you would have to answer if, starting from that point of annexation, then there's a process that there would be a rezoning process, and so there's additional meetings, but once that's all gone through, then it's in the developer's hands to begin the work, so.
Best case scenario, something would possibly start in the spring. That would be the best, case scenario. They're the fastest it could take place, but realistically, we're, probably 6 to 9 months out before you would even think about doing anything like that.
Okay.
I guess some of the concerns I had, and I don't know, Jennifer, if this has been researched at all. I mean, I know this is just a concept plan, but again, I'm thinking of the city's water wells and utilities. And Brian, I don't know if you've got any data on where we're at. I mean, as proposed, this is, another 300 to 500 residents or something like that. Do we have any sort of planning for what our capacity is, water-wise? I know we just had our sewer meeting with Mankato. There's adequate capacity there at the sewage treatment plant, but have we looked at anything as far as water?
So we just received this request, so we haven't had a chance to really sit down and have those thorough meetings with the engineer and staff. But just some preliminary conversations with the engineer, asking about our existing utilities. Do we have utility capacity sufficient to serve a development like this? And I've been told that there should not be any issues with the portion north of the creek, but the area south of the creek and where there would need to be a lift station, and, you know, there's just more, we just need time. And actually, Brian, Gettle, Public Works Director, and I have a meeting tomorrow with the city engineer to kind of really go through this and make sure we've got all of our questions answered. I guess in short, I've been told there's a water main to connect to at the east end of Oak Drive, and that, you know, sewer, we should be able to handle development on the north end, but we need to do more research as it relates to the south of the pond. I don't know if that answers your question. That's just the information I have right now, but
No, that
we're
was
gonna
just
be-
my biggest concern. I know we've been talking about water filtration plant, and actually that particular project also involves a new well. From what I understand, you know, some of that, in order to give us more capacity as well. So I just wanted to see if this brings us up to any point where we're starting to bump into some issues, and what that, you know, looks like. Let's say we have other development occurring, you know, around the community. What do we have left for kind of capacity on our current system versus, you know, a 5-year plan if we've got a new well and filtration plant? What does that look like? So, do you own the property currently at this
No,
point?
we have a purchase agreement.
Okay. You know, my biggest concern, just personally from what I've seen, is the apartment complex side of it, kind of what I would say is phase 2. If I understand it correctly, it's a 2-phased, you know, kind of a project. Just that all of the apartments kind of in that area. I know there's some wetland concerns. It looks like there's been some information kind of looked at as far as wetlands in that area.
Correct.
I don't live in that area. I don't know how high the water rises when it floods in the spring. I mean, there is a considerable amount of storage capacity in that lowland that comes up, and I don't know where all of that.
Yeah. We did have
Lies.
soil samples taken. We haven't received the report back yet.
Okay.
Mayor, I was at the planning commission meeting, and for those that don't know, I do live out in that Eagle Heights subdivision, so I have kind of 2 hats wearing right now from the resident standpoint, but also obviously a council standpoint. But I was here at the planning commission and heard a lot of the concerns, heard a lot of the good conversations. And one of them that did arise, for me especially, and I think Tony can relate to this a little bit, being that he lives right, you know, the wetland's right behind him, is that is a concern of mine, even if they say it's not a wetland, the amount of concrete and hard surfaces with the water runoff into a wetland area or swampy area that already does go into or run up to neighbors' yards in a field and stuff that is pulling some of that water in, and now we put all of this concrete in that's gonna have runoff. Can that area handle that much pavement when it can't handle all of the fields already soaking in and saturating, you know, pulling it in? That's a concern of mine. We talked about the water being, you know, the city handling that, but there was conversations in that meeting on the road being too narrow. Can fire get back there, turn around easily? I think after you left, there was more conversations even about just day-to-day. I mean, fire, you hope that doesn't happen much. The day-to-day activity of UPS, FedEx, people moving in and out with, you know, moving trucks and stuff like that. Can that road handle someone moving in and blocking that whole area? Where do they have to go? Where do they, you know, migrate? Where do people go in and out? The bottlenecks that happen. Putting residents' hats on, getting it to be a cul-de-sac versus having them be able to drive through into Oak Drive, making them have to go in and out those 2 ways. Now, it does take an access point out, but being mindful of that, I don't want to seem stereotypical, but that renter mentality, especially when you're talking 8plexes, might not have those families in them, and they're just there to sleep, bedroom community, in and out, want to go get to where I'm going as quick as possible, versus the residents that are in the R1 district that are there to live, sleep, play, everything, keeping traffic out of their area as much as possible, keeping it that, how do I say it, where I think a lot of us noticed it during agencies reconstruction on Thomas, where you could tell the townhomes and the renters versus the residents, the going 35, 40 through residents' houses in the middle of town versus the residents going 20 miles an hour. So there's concern on my end from that. What about the trucks? You know, there was conversation, I don't think we ever talked about that. You know, you talked about the parking and there's ample parking for it. But what about someone that has a 1-ton truck, pickup truck, just, that's their day-to-day truck? They're a longer bed. Are they gonna be sticking out where they're constantly blocking traffic in and out? So there's just a lot of those concerns that come up for me on the bottlenecks, the water runoff, the ample extra space when people are migrating around, all of those pieces. Have all of that been kind of fleshed out between last week's meeting and this week's meeting?
I don't know, necessarily say, I would say all of it, but as we, confirmed at last week's meeting, the radius turns in there all meet the movements of the same standards that Mankato has in their planning movement for all of their fire equipment. This is the same layout that we have at Cornerstone. The buildings are the same size, parking lots are the same size. There's UPS trucks in there, FedEx trucks in there, garbage trucks in there weekly. Eagle Lake Fire, I'm sure, has probably been there, a time or two. I'm not sure, but so all the radiuses do meet the size movements. The parking stalls, definitely accommodate a standard 1-ton pickup truck without any issue. We did talk about oversized vehicles, and we would, I'm open to, finding a spot, and leaving it open if people have trailers or something like that, so that way there is a place to accommodate those if that's a concern. We can certainly look at options for that.
Is there possibility to block off that road? And I don't know what it all entails, but I know up at the beginning of Oak Drive, it doesn't go through because it runs into the Davy property. But down at the bottom, it is a through street. Is there reasons that can't be cul-de-saced off or blocked off and just a sidewalk through it so that traffic can't go through it, or can
You're
that?
saying at the creek?
Yeah.
Sure.
Or at between what would be R1 and the rental units.
Just to make sure, are you talking that coming off of Oak Drive or
Yep.
coming?
Yep, off Oak Drive.
Again, we are open to, a conversation about it and looking at things. If you have a traffic issue or you feel there will be a traffic issue, and we could look at something, to do prior to any construction starting, or you could put it in with an option to, put in some kind of prohibitive method, at a later time if it becomes an issue, I guess.
Would there be any consideration for, instead of a 2-phase project, just 1 phase, just the north portion of that?
You mean not doing anything down below?
Correct.
It definitely wouldn't work out
Okay.
financially to only do a portion of that project for the price the land is selling for.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, again, where I'm struggling is all of the apartments and whether that's the appropriate location for them. The townhome, duplex pieces feel, more natural to me, but it's the southern portion of
over
the,
the past week, I've had some conversations and also some thoughts myself, as far as, some different things we could consider. I am talking with the landowner next door there, and, just to kind of let the cat out of the bag, as far as, around Pam and Denny's place, that L shape of units there, and those 3 also directly south of them, maybe putting those in as single-family home lots, taking out the 11 8-plexes in a row there and just making those twin homes. And then, if we can work out something with Denny, because we do need about 20 feet of land that he has there to make that work, we could just put twin homes to where those 11 are, just to reduce the size and make it a bigger buffer between the single family and the multifamily.
any potential for pushing the development more into single-family development on the south end? Or is again, that gonna get to be, as far as lowering the density, instead of where the apartments are, if that became single-family down there?
The challenges I run into with a single family are, you know, the costs, you know, that have to go into this now. I mean, as everybody knows, everything is going up and up in price, and all this infrastructure, et cetera, is just making it very challenging. I know single-family home developers have looked at this parcel, and they've had to walk away from it because it just didn't pencil out for them. But with all the wetlands and the lift station, it's not an easy site, but
Right.
it would work with this scenario.
Well, you just said you were open to options, so I'm making sure that all the options, you know, are looked at, because to me, you know, it feels like, especially the south, we'll call it L, to me feels like single-family property.
South of the creek,
Yeah, south of the creek and then kind of up the L side. You know, to me, that's what, because of the naturalness of the area that, you know, as we develop, that seems to be more apt, in my mind, to be
Sure.
single-family properties.
and for me, it just will not, you know, financially work out
Right.
to put a few single-family home lots in there. It just wouldn't make sense in today's market.
To me, it just seems like there's a lot of people in a small area. It just looking at it, I don't know. I just feel like there's gonna be more issues than there's more positives for the city, especially for the Eagle Heights people. I mean, that, they already have apartments to the north, and I've lived back there, and like Beth says, it gets busier than, you know, really busy 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, and then same when they're coming home from work. I would like to see single-family homes, and if it doesn't work out for you, I understand that. That's just my thought is it's almost like we're packing it in like sardines here, and, you know, and I understand where you're coming from, that's where the money's at.
Well, it is workforce housing. I mean, so they are going to and from work at those prime times, just like everybody else is, and it's just, you know, more affordable that, you know, a new single-family home nowadays is, you know, I think a starter one's edging into 300,000.
Well, right,
So,
yeah, I'm not questioning pricing at all, I'm just, my thing is the amount of people that are gonna be there, you know, it seems like a lot to me in a small area.
The density, I think, was like 5 point, what do we have on that sheet? 5.7 or something like that per acre, which is, you know, it's actually really low for R3.
You know, living out here, my natural gut was, oh, heck no, you know, like, I wanna look out and see what we moved out there for, the trees and then wildlife and all that. Knowing, though, that at some point it would get developed. I think where my struggle is, both residential and council standpoint, is the amount of eightplexes. I'm all for, because not everybody wants to buy a house, not everybody can afford townhomes, twin homes, seem doable. You still have space, you still have, can raise a family in one and not ever buy a house. I think for me, my struggle, and I think some of the residents in that area especially too, is just the mass amount of eightplexes in that area. I don't think I've heard much, obviously Davies would have a concern, but as many issues with the twin homes as it is that lower, south portion with how many are in there, and then all of what the residents see as the water issues. What's that gonna do to my yard when it starts raining and there's a runoff? What's it gonna do to different things that way? So, do I like it at all? Probably not from a resident standpoint, but it's gonna, you know, there's potential for it to happen. I think it's just the amount of people and the like, the density in that area is where I struggle.
Maybe we should just get a few of us together and talk about some different ideas then. I'm open to that.
Yeah, one thing I would like to bring up is that, you know, the density of all those apartments are, you know, basically the same amount of apartments are up at Highland Hills, up by the university. There's 28 plexes there, and then there's 28 fourplexes in Highland Hills, and those are very tight quarters. And, you know, if it is following what Mankato does for their fire and rescue stuff, they're tight spaces, and I agree with Mayor Tim in the sense that I see one more concern with putting apartments out there is that whole area is basically just gonna be slated off to being a rental area. I mean, if we're fine doing that as having that whole area south of town being a rental area and leaving that little section of R1, I mean, you know, ultimately we'll be culpable for that decision to let that go all to apartments. I mean, I really, do I care what you do with your money and what you do with your land? I don't. You can do whatever you want,
Yeah.
it's America. But I do think that that area out there lends itself to some nice single-family homes. I heard what you said about it doesn't make money. I do think that your townhomes up there by the highway are very nice, the Cornerstone Apartments, but I think that area out there, I mean, we may as well just then zone all that area for R3. I think we have to look at a bigger picture. I don't think we need to be thinking about just this little, you know, section of land. I think, you know, if we're gonna zone that area for R3 and R2, we may as well just make on a future map saying that the rest of the area around there is R3, and what does that say to everyone in Beth's neighborhood? Welcome to the rental area. That's my opinion. Like I said, you and the realtors, whatever you guys wanna do, it's not my land, I don't own it, that's just my opinion on being around a lot of rental properties up in the Highland Hills area and driving through there, and it's an absolute disaster driving through rental areas, contrary to what anyone says. Whether they want to drive a big truck, a school bus, or whatever, they're hard to drive through. That's just my thought on this. Mostly, my biggest concern is that we are going to be leading ourselves into having that area, that southeast corner, to that tree grove and all of that possibly, you know, other land there, you know, really ultimately that will probably all be R3. And if that's what the council wants to do, I think that's fine. I'm not partial to R1 or R3, but I think that, you know, there's quite a few different things going on there. So we'll have to make an informed decision on what's best for the future of that area. That's where I'm thinking, you know, and I nothing against what you're proposing. I think that what you have here is, you know, it's your decision, you know, you're the one buying, I'm not buying the land. But I think it's something we have to discern about on the council on what the vision is for that area.
Can I mention two things? I don't think the year that Highland Hills was constructed, they had the same standards as they do nowadays for the turning radiuses and the parking requirements. So when you drive through Cornerstone, it doesn't look as congested as Highland Hills, for example. And then our concept that I'm working on, and I haven't made any deals with Denny yet or the Terrells, but it is you know, eliminating all 11 of those townhomes going north and south, the 8 plexes, excuse me. You know,
We need like a laser pointer, I think.
so all that will become twin homes down there. Single-family residence, where you see those 7 buildings there, and then also along Hammond, Bernie's, lot number 2, and that single family. This over here, our concept kind of that we have just scratched up, is just R2. So it could be, you know, single family or twin homes in R2. And I don't think, I do like this area, you know, for R3. I know that's some people don't, but I think it looks very park-like, and it is the furthest away, so I think it's the most appropriate spot from my standpoint.
Have you had any discussions with the county as far as access? I know on my concept plan, it looks like there's an access road out to County Road 27.
Yeah, we just have it lined up directly with the other road.
Has that been discussed with the county at all?
We haven't, it's just,
All right.
we're not there yet.
Yeah, I don't know what their thinking is for access points and things like that as well, but
Historically, they always want them to pair up with any adjacent
Right.
roads, so that's what we've done.
well, I think the beauty of what we've got here. Now, it sounds like you're also looking at this concept could change if you were to do something with the neighboring property and things, so this is kind of in flux. We have, I guess, two decisions in front of us. The first is we have an annexation petition, which we would have to take some action on to move that forward. But that's kind of outside of the rezoning. And so we sometimes get into this issue where, you know, if we annex a property thinking that we're gonna do some type of zoning district, and that could change, you know, over time. I know that's been one of the difficulties, and I love that the fact that you brought a concept plan before all of this, you know, has kind of gone through, and so it gives us the opportunity to talk about what it is that we think that the proper zoning should be, you know, in this area. And I think that's really the key, but we have the annexation petition that we have to, you know, act on. And I guess that was why I was starting to ask the question, is there a time limit on that? Or can we have further discussions with the concept, with the council to give it some thought? We can get some public input on what this zoning district should look like prior to annexation. And I know sometimes there's weird little legal problems if we plan for a zoning district prior to something being annexed. I know we've run into this before, and I don't know if that's an issue that we would have in this particular case, or?
Well, I think you're right, we would have an issue because the code talks about needing a preliminary plat before you can consider rezoning. So I think that, you know, that those would be, I guess, separate issues, if you will. But I know that's a great question you asked, Mayor, and I've looked through the statute and then also back through our code, and I don't see anything that has a deadline from the time a petition for annexation is submitted, like a variance or conditional use permit. So I have not seen anything yet. I think what I'll do is just check with the Office of Municipal Boundary Adjustments tomorrow to see if there's a, you know, a time frame. I've not seen anything in anything I've read.
So I guess I would like to propose, you know, from my opinion, I wouldn't like to discount everything just, you know, right off and say, you know, I'm not in favor of annexation, I'm not in favor of a particular rezoning, but I'd like to, if you're willing and the property owners are willing to kind of let this formulate a little bit more, and if you start to reach out to neighboring property owners, and if your concept changes slightly, you know, you've mentioned, okay, so we could have a few single-family houses, you know, in the L shape here, and if this particular parcel was something where you could do something different, you know, does that change our thinking on this? And so I don't know if, what I'm proposing is, I don't want to say, no, let's not move forward, but I don't want to say, yes, let's move forward. I'd like to still research, you know, some of our water issues, and get some additional input. So is that something that you're open to?
I mean, we have a timeline, obviously, on our purchase agreement that I don't know, I'll have to follow up with that to see where we're at and making sure it would fit with everything. But, I mean, I'm open to a conversation, you know, especially with the neighbors. And, you know, I'd just like to work on something that would work, you know, for everybody. I can see your point of view, and you know, would like to see single-family homes everywhere, but it you know, has to pencil out, you know, in the economic side of things too, so.
I think that's where, I think we're making progress from where we were a week ago already. I think there just has to be a good blend of single-family, multifamily living without it being too dense in one or the other, you know, because there are people that are not, and monthly I get people, hey, do you guys have any rentals out there? And no, everything's full. They're not ready to buy because they're just here for a little bit, or they're just moving to town, want to get their feet wet, whatever. So I think there is some need, it's just to what capacity. And then if we're having the mass capacity low, can we flip-flop them at the very least to get the more people that are coming in, stay on the high end of it, where they're not going all the way through the twin homes and stuff. So I think there's some work that can be done. I obviously, naturally as a resident, wouldn't want any of it, but no, from a city standpoint, something is bound to happen at some point. My other question comes in with the Davy, the Davy parcel. I didn't get a chance to read your guys' letter, read a little bit before, but I assume that if this whole thing gets annexed in, projects start, Davies are wanting to sell and get out, is that correct? You're sitting in the wrong spot.
You didn't have questions, I'm still right here.
This is not right. I assume that if this project does move forward, you guys are not wanting to stay, you're running to run, okay?
We don't wanna live next to rental property, period.
So then my next question comes in then, you guys sell, what does that look like for the rest of this, are you guys taking their, buying their property? Is that gonna be a bunch of eightplexes and that? What does that piece look like? So we're looking at this from the council standpoint, looking at it as a whole, in the sense that if this goes through, the Davy property will be up for sale as well.
Absolutely.
And what does that look like? There's not a lot of residents on that Maple right now. Gasline goes through with some goofy stuff there, but what does that look like as well? So we're being mindful of the whole big picture in that area, not just the parcels that we're talking about right now too. Which we don't obviously need to say right now, but that's just what I want to know from you guys, that if this goes through, you're running.
We would like to be gone, period.
Okay.
But we want to be rezoned, so.
Well, yes, before we would like to be rezoned the same as whatever you propose for the proposed now, you've got project you got now. Whatever this is here, up next to us, we want to be the same so that somebody can develop our property too.
Your property's not currently annexed into the city,
No,
so that would have to be another
that's correct.
step in that as well, so.
Okay.
And this is one down here. Originally, this was all planned for single family. I don't know how many of you remember that. But it was all single family in 3 phases. And of course, it went up, maybe because of money, but, it sure doesn't fit the project now as I see it.
Very good. We appreciate the information that you've provided as well. But Justin, I think that's kind of where I am. I think, there's Eagle Lake's business really is housing. That's what we do here. We're not going to say that, we've got a giant retail hub or anything. It's housing. And so, all varieties of housing, kind of make that blend what we can offer here. So again, I think you've got a proposal. At this point, I think there's some concerns, some things that we want to work through before we would move forward. But that was, I guess, my thinking. I don't know if the council's got any other thoughts on kind of moving this forward as let's look if there's other options, if you've got some other pieces that may come into fruition here soon, if this concept changes. Did you have something, Jennifer?
Yes, just to follow back up to your question, Mayor, about the timeline to respond, and the more I think about it here, since we don't have legal counsel present, would it be all right if we tabled any action until the December 6th meeting, and then I could get a response from legal counsel as to what the city is obligated to do as far as, responding to the petition that you have before you?
Right, because my thought was that once a petition came in, it was either a thumbs up or a thumbs down from the council within, and my thinking was 60 days, but that might have been that conditional use permit where there had to be action taken, one way or the other. So if the council is interested in entertaining kind of tabling the petition until next meeting, and then we can continue to gather up information utility-wise, we can gather up any legal issues, and then if the developer has any modifications to the concept plan, but I would like to start to kind of formulate what the thinking is from the council, from the planning commission on just how these areas should be zoned in the future. You know, as we said, when we started, we were looking at all single family out there. You know, that's obviously, you know, kind of the ultimate dream, but, you know, the market changes and there's different factors, so, I think we need to have that conversation before we can make a full decision, so.
Yeah, I think from my standpoint as well, because I think to be fair to the developer, we need to kind of understand what our expectations are. Are we expecting them to come back? Obviously, already we've talked about having come back being less dense and what that might look like. Obviously, there's tons of numbers to be run of, you know, if you change density and you change all these kind of things, you gotta see if it still flows through all the balance sheets. So I think it might be more fair to kind of come back because I think the answer should be yes, and this is what we're thinking about zoning, so you have a better understanding with purchase and annexing at that time versus annexing, then we come back and say, yeah, that's just not gonna work for us. I think I'd like to have some more information on what that might look like with a little more, less density in some of these areas, so.
And I noticed, Jennifer, on the application, there's kind of one additional sheet requesting that if the developer's plan isn't approved, that the parcel would revert back to the township. Kind of a, is that from the landowners
Yes.
request?
Yep, that was a concern expressed by the landowners. In talking with legal counsel, I know legal counsel is going to recommend that it be kept out of, you know, the annexation documents per se, and that they would have to follow the detachment process required, or excuse me, outlined in statute.
All right, any other questions from the council? Then I would look for a motion to table the annexation petition until next month.
I'll make that motion to table the annexation.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor would say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? That carries. Well, thank you. And then, Mr. Jackson, if you will stay in contact with Jennifer with any alterations, modifications that come up on your end, I would like to continue this conversation then next month, if we can do that. Thank you. All right, then we will move on to new business item number 2. And this is a request from a developer for the city to remove snow in the Eagle Ridge Phase 2 subdivision prior to the city accepting infrastructure. And so Jennifer, I'll let you give a little background here.
Sounds great. Mayor and City Council, Luke Israelson, owner of KJ Walk, was present at the last City Council meeting. There was some brief discussion about snow removal services and language in the current developers agreement. Following that meeting and the approval of a supplemental agreement, I had put together a cover letter with some of the outstanding items and a notation that snow removal would be the responsibility of the developer. And I did send that to the developer, so he was aware of what would be attached to all building permits when they're pulled. And then he contacted me and said, well, I don't have the equipment or the means to be able to do this. And so he's requesting that the city provide snow removal services. Since the last meeting, we have had one permit pulled. So it's my, understanding that there would be construction going on this winter. And the developer was planning to attend this evening's meeting. He's not able, but he has requested that this come before you. And he does acknowledge the developer's agreement, and the language in there, does state that the developer is responsible for all liability and costs with the completion of the improvements, including snow removal. But he's asking for your consideration to approve his request so that permits can be pulled and construction can take place over the winter.
So just to be clear then, Jennifer, is the developer willing to pay for snow removal?
He did not say that.
Okay.
No, he did not indicate that that's something he would be willing to do, so.
And do we happen to know what property the first permit is on?
Yes, and
It's probably the furthest property away.
maybe I could pull up, let's see here. Up on the beacon, it's sort of, maybe my computer's not gonna work here. Let me go grab, if you'll bear with me, I'll be right back.
I just wanted to see where, I mean, if construction, were to start yet this winter on a particular property, where is that one located? If there had to be plowing to get to that site, which one is it? And Murphy's Law says it's the furthest away from 598th Avenue.
Brian, because it really doesn't matter if it snows 3 inches or 6 inches. When you get a snowfall with our current resident, wherever we sit right now, how long until all the roads are cleared enough to get people out? I mean, they're gonna complain no matter what you do, but clear enough to get people out safely. Like when you start, say, I mean, guessing you guys start, I've seen you around 4 a.m. You're starting. What time are you done to where?
You get like the first half.
Yes, yes.
With our 2 big trucks and our 2 smaller trucks going, it's like 4 hours
Okay.
to knock it out, just to get like the first half.
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. So right where it's highlighted, I don't know if you can see that very well on there, but that's 327 Falcon Run. That's the permit we've had pulled to date.
And how many houses are there right now, Jennifer? Are there any on that?
Nope.
Falcon? Okay.
Yeah, so that road, Falcon, just has the first lift of blacktop, and then the cul-de-sac as well. So I'm just wondering if we can get by with just plowing Falcon and leaving the cul-de-sac if we don't get any building permit activity back on the cul-de-sac lots. By the time things get processed through, it'd probably be spring before anybody gets any construction going, on other lots. And this one too might not even start right away. So, to me, if there's activity and construction, it'd be nice if we can do some snow plowing, and that's why I was kind of looking at if it was just one portion of this. Again, this wouldn't be for residential access. This would only be for contractor access. So we might even be able to just plow from 598th and push it north up Falcon until you get to a spot, but don't even take the rest of Falcon. I don't know, maybe it's even just harder to stop in the middle of a road rather than just push it down. Right, so.
It'd be easier just to come all the way off Falcon and
Just back out.
For free though? I don't know.
Well, I was trying to think back to the Greenfield subdevelopment and, like Thomas Drive. And we only had one lift of blacktop on that for many years of the construction of that neighborhood. And I don't know what the process was that we went through to accept all of that, at which time the city then was gonna plow as a matter of routine course, then when it's ours to maintain. Do we have any standard for when that happens?
guess I'd probably have to defer on, from the Public Works. Do you guys remember anything in the past at all?
I don't know that we ever did anything official at those points anyway, so. Well, maybe Jennifer, you can look into that with the engineer and see if there's an official acceptance that we should be doing as a council on any development, in the city. Typically it would be at the time of completion of the project when all of the items have been completed from the developer's agreement. But occasionally we can wait, for the second lift of blacktop before we, reach the final construction, so. I guess in my opinion, I'd like to see if we can, keep it cleared if we've got construction going on that road.
I think that's where I'm sitting a little bit, is the fact that we're wanting people to buy these lots, we're wanting people to build. And I know it's winter, so snow will be covered, so how many people will really go out and look at them, who knows, but if it's snow covered and they can't access them, they won't go look at them at all.
Well, if we don't, he'll hire, so what he's doing is trying to save
Trying to
money.
get away. But if we're already out there, it's not a first, one of the last roads that are getting done, and then we're there, it's just one quick pass, and what is that to the city? Is it $50 a time you go down there? Is it nothing because we're wanting to develop? I don't know, and that part, is probably less concerning. I think with everything, all the other punch list items that haven't been done still, I think it can be done, or should be. Putting a cost to it is not inappropriate. I just think that we should be able to work with them and see and get even one pass down so that build can keep happening. And construction can keep going on.
Would the council be comfortable if we determined a cost for this snow plowing per pass, per
I think
event?
billing, I would think that it'd be easier for staff if it's a one-time charge for the whole season instead of every time it happens, Brian's gotta tell somebody to bill $50 instead of just saying it's $1,000 for the season and we're just gonna do it as a matter of course. Those I would think that billing per use would be kind of a pain. And I think it's appropriate that, we'll do it, but it's gonna be $500 for the season or $1,000, whatever that number is, to do it.
Well, we have a snowplow truck that's available for sale.
Sure. Tell them we can rent it to them for $1,000 for the season.
Well, excuse me.
Are there a lot of lots, Anthony, get viewed over the winter, so just
Not really.
until later in the spring?
Yeah.
When people start
You know,
to,
my opinion, until someone moves in, I really don't think it's our issue, but I could be being a grouch,
Well, if we were to work with them and do it for a cost,
Yeah.
since that is a part of the developer's agreement, that snow plowing is their responsibility. We have the means, we have the equipment. It's in our best interest to get houses developed out there, so if we could determine what that cost is, I think if we pitch that back to them and say, yes, we'll take care of this. And again, I would put the caveat on the thing too. If nobody's building, we're not plowing. If we issue a permit and this builder says, well, I'm not gonna start until April, well, then there's no purpose for us to be plowing it anyway, so it really hinges upon if somebody's gonna get in there and get started yet this year. So if we're comfortable moving forward with that, I guess I would ask the staff to put together what that cost would be kind of for the season, just to come down Falcon. And then it can be an open thing where, you know, if, here's the cost if we have to do this plowing, and maybe we get lucky and nothing has to be done even yet this year if nobody gets started. And then we're gonna have 16 permits come in tomorrow, and we're gonna have all sorts of stuff going on, so.
I think making it known too in that it's not gonna, you may not be clear at 6:30 in the morning. I mean, they're gonna get cleared when everybody else gets cleared. They're not gonna be, first out, which I would hope, but weirder things have been happening with this project. No, no. No, it's just when the contractors wanna go there at 8 AM and they're not, the road's not clear, you're working on all the roads, so.
All right, well then we need to take an action on this item. I guess since I brought it up, I will make a motion to approve the request to plow the snow on Falcon Drive, and instruct city staff to determine cost for snow plowing, kind of that lump sum, as John said, for the year. And then that can be open if, in fact, snow plowing is needed, you know, then we would move forward with that. So my motion would be approve the request for snow plowing, assign a cost to it, and bring that back to KJ Walk. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That carries. All right, item 3 of new business. Speaking of snow plowing, is an offer received for our 1986 plow truck. Jennifer and Brian, I'll turn this over to you.
All right, so the 1986 plow truck has been listed for sale for quite some time now. We advertised it on the city's website, Facebook page, and on the League of Minnesota Cities online for sale section. And up until just recently, no interest had been received, but we do have one bid right now in the amount of $2,500. Also, I'm gonna pull up here so you can remember. There's a little description, has miles on the different pieces. Minimum bid was set at $6,000 back last March, and here's some pictures of the truck. And I'll let Brian talk a little bit about if he thinks the $2,500 bid is, you know, something the city should even consider, or if there's some other options he would like the city to look into. So I'll turn it over to you, Brian. I don't know if you want to use this or.
So the price is $6,000. That is, we came up with that from when we bought our new truck. That's what like a trade-in value would be. But we did keep that old truck and used it for a couple of years of plowing. But now we have no use for it now. So it has been sitting around. There is the auction min bid out there that we have not had that on there. The police department has been selling their squad cars on there. I don't know if it'd be a good deal to, even for like us to get an account to start selling some of this stuff. I know the police department sells theirs through Blue Earth County on that. And I don't know if Blue Earth County just, you know, if it'd be too much of a hassle for them to sell this for us, or if we opened up a new account to sell, you know, to see if selling something like this, or if we don't want to deal with it anymore and just sell it and be done with it. Yeah, like I said too, you know, the tires are getting a little older and stuff too now and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's totally up to you guys, I guess. If you want to just.
Does everything work?
Everything works on it. It was DOT'd in 2000. I think it was 2020 it was DOT'd. So, yeah, like the brakes and, we replaced the leaf spring last time, it was DOT'd and different things like that. So it's a pretty solid truck.
Maybe, you know what it's worth?
I don't know, just that, just that we got that, quote for trading it in for $6,000 back then. And that was, 2019, I think it is, when we got our other truck that,
If we kept the truck, we would have to get it inspected.
yeah, if we wanted to use it again, we'd have to get it DOT'd again and stuff.
Rough cost of that.
It's mainly the repairs is what it is. The DOT itself is only like, maybe a little over $100. And then we don't have room to store it either, really.
Thoughts from the council?
Seems a little light to me.
Well, especially with the way that used vehicles have, supposedly gone up in price here recently, it doesn't seem to be helping us out on this.
I'd buy it for $2,500 and
So
part
would
it out on eBay, I mean, you could part certain parts of that thing out on eBay.
And how much it weighs and what the scrap number is.
That's actually just what Brian had mentioned too, was the scrap value. And if I could just interrupt really quick, Brian had mentioned min bid. Back when the fire truck, we were talking about possibly trying to get the fire truck sold on using that min bid. I had contacted the county, and I have the contact information. So, I mean, we sure can try that route as well. I just pulled it up in my email. That, again, was for the fire truck, but we sure could go that route for the plow truck too. So I think that's definitely an
So-
option.
Where was this truck listed?
The League of Minnesota Cities website, city Facebook page, city website.
Okay.
And then this is called Min Bid. That's where John sells the old squad cars. We wouldn't be able to use Blue Earth County Sheriff's Office. Kind of helps with that right now, but there's another contact I can get hold of. We just have to set up an account, send them the information, and then they do take a cut. I'm not sure what the percentage is, but so.
Here's a 95 for 14.9.
Yeah. And so do we give it another shot on another source and see if we can get closer to that 6,000?
I think it feels light for what it is, so I'd like to see it go either a little longer, adding it to another site, whatever, but I feel like it's a little light. So I don't know if it needs a motion. If it does, I would say, I would
Yep.
make a motion to not accept the offer and to add it to the other sites if possible.
I'll second that motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Now, I assume though, if we don't need to use this plow this winter, cause it was for sale, so we wouldn't need to DOT it then, right? Okay.
The next purchaser would have to just DOT it, you wouldn't have to, right?
Personal use, you wouldn't have to.
Oh, okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. All right, then the last item we have is budget work session. So are we then officially going into a work session? Do we need to close our meeting? Or is it just part of the meeting?
It's just part of the meeting.
Okay.
I just label it work session so that you didn't feel like you had to take any formal action. You could just kind of work through some of these items. So.
Well, then I will turn this over to you, Jennifer, if you want to review kind of where we've been.
Okay. So we've been talking for last couple months about doing a wage survey. It was something that we've been talking about for a while, and so we have a contract with Minnesota Valley Council of Governments, and they can help us with things such as labor issues and also planning and zoning. So I reached out to them to see if they would help us complete a survey of comparable cities, if you will, in our area, to see where our compensation stacks up to those in our area and if we're paying market. So included here, I just want to give you a little background on the last time a wage survey was done. It looks like the last time a survey was done was ironically in November of 2016. And at that time, the council opted to make some increases. They went ahead with a step increase and a cost of living adjustment each year. And so that's what's been taking place each year since 2017. After reviewing the results from the wage survey, it looks like overall across the board, the city is trending below average. In talking with the COG, I was told that being within 10% above or below average is typically considered within market. So just keep that in mind as you look at some of this information. When the preliminary budget was set, a 10% wage increase was factored in across the board, knowing that we were following the same process for CPI, and it was set at 5.9%, and then a standard step increase is 2%, and then there's a little cushion added in there. So we'll get into the information here shortly, but I just wanted to kind of give you an update on how we got to where we are here. So the wage recommendation, I guess, would be to kind of get our employees back to paying within the market. We would follow through with a cost of living increase at 5.9%, the 2% step increases, and then add another 2% step at July 1st. So everything would hit the budget at the same time, January 1st. You'd have essentially that 5.9%, a 2%, and then 6 months later, we'd have another step increase for employees that were eligible. So in total for 2022, employees, if eligible for step increases, could obtain up to a 10% increase. And then the other issue we have with the current range is we have 10 steps in the range, and there's 2 employees right now that are at the top of the range. So if you wanted to increase the steps, you could increase it by, you could add another one to make it 11 or a 2 to make it 12 steps. And so I have put that information in front of you. If you'll pull up that information, I can kind of walk through what it all means. So we've got a sheet that looks like this. Everybody can see this. And what this is the traditional, step schedule. On there are 2 extra steps, so there's an 11 and a 12. So that basically extends the maximum range for each pay grade. And then you'll see another sheet that has a summary, and it's got title. So you've got the admin positions, the police positions, and then public works, and there's a range min and a range max. So basically, when the survey was done, each of the cities that responded followed back up with what the minimum starting for a position would be, and then the maximum. So that's where we have the range min and max. And then there's a chart here that I put together that shows kind of where, so you can see there's, like for instance, we'll take Carrie with the deputy city clerk. We have, so on the sheet that looks like this, you'll see the administrative, deputy city clerk, what she's actually making, the Eagle Lake deputy clerk 2022 was proposed, and then the average deputy clerk. So you can kind of see where I'm showing that the city is falling behind on the average for that position as well as all of our positions. And then on the other sheets that have a little bit of color coding, you'll see at the top there's Blue Earth County is in green, and that is not included in any of the averages. So that sheet looks like this. And there'll be a sheet for each of the admin, and then Public Works and Police. And that's just more of a comparison because it's in our area in the county. Because it's so much larger, we really can't factor that in, but it is something, that is still a competitor for workforce. Then we've got the city of Mankato, that's also not factored in. But then the other cities that are listed, we've got range min, range max. And then at the bottom in pink, you'll see the min and max for Eagle Lake, the average of the cities that responded, and then proposed after increasing cost of living, and then the step schedule, that would be what our minimum and max would be. And so then that was done for each of the different departments. And like I said, overall, we've budgeted in a 10% into the budget when we did the preliminary budget, so I tried to stay within that, knowing that, we can't solve all of our issues as far as being possibly, below where we should be in 1 year, but we can start making some movement in the right direction. So my recommendation, as I mentioned just a little bit ago, is that employees that are eligible be granted a step increase at January 1st. Everybody receive cost of living adjustment, 5.9%. And then at July 1st, all employees that are eligible continue to receive another step increase. So in total, employees could receive up to 10% in 2022. I know it's a lot of information to digest, so if you have any questions, let me know. I'll do my best to try to answer, and if I can't answer your question tonight, I sure can do more research and bring it back before the next city council meeting on December 6th.
My only question is 10% enough to catch up? Or do we need to start looking at maybe increasing that? Because to me, it looks like we need to kind of beef the numbers up a little bit.
Right, you're absolutely right. So, and that's something we can't solve in 1 year, but I think that absolutely that's a great point, in that I think that looking towards next year, we don't know what the cost of living adjustment is going to be, and so the council, I don't think right now you can agree to what that's going to be because we don't know what it's going to be, but I think just knowing that in advance, kind of planning ahead, we're going to have to do something similar, and then just keep working towards staying on top of this.
Is like a 2 to 3 year window, a 5-year window? I mean, what kind of window?
I think a 2
is
to 3.
ideal?
Yep, I think a 2 to 3 window would be good. It definitely, and I talked to the COG about that too. There's just no way that you could, your budget could sustain an impact, to this magnitude to get employees where they need to be. So.
That's kind of my thought process too. Is like we want to take care of you guys, but at the same time, we can't, put ourselves in a bad position. But in my opinion, a 2 to 3 year plan is what we should probably start looking at.
And the good news is, going forward, if you'd go forward with the recommendation here, there would be no additional impact to the budget in what was already set for the preliminary budget. So we're already within, there'd be no, additional, obviously you can't increase the tax levy, but there wouldn't be any other repercussions.
Are there any ways to, I think one of the things that we started looking at was part-time police officer wages. It's kind of like the impetus of this whole thing. Is there any way to target one particular, I don't know what you want to call that, employee grade position? I know then we get into lots and lots of legal
Right.
things.
Right, and that's a great question, and that was kind of, you know, it's very tempting to want to just say, okay, let's just beef up that one area, but then, you know, in working with the COG too and talking about just trying to treat all employees, you know, for morale purposes as well, and just trying to treat everybody the same across the board. But the city always has flexibility in what step you start an employee at, so that's another thought too, that, you know, if necessary, the council could start the part-time police officers at, say, a step 2 versus a step 1. And that the city has flexibility, and you don't have to start everybody off at step 1, or if you start somebody at step 5, doesn't mean the next person coming in is entitled to that in a different category.
So jumping in here, looking at different positions, I do know, I just did some quick math here. So I'm gonna take the Public Works Supervisor and City Administrator. So the average, so it says Eagle Lake City Administrator 2022 range minimum to range maximum, take that divided by 2, $89,702. And that's Eagle Lake. For the average city administrator, from the survey, that's $95,000. So if you were gonna be doing a wage increase on that, that would, I think doing it all across the board 10% would also be unfair too, because that to get that position up to the average would be 6.5% increase. Now for the Public Works Supervisor, I just did some math here too. The average of Public Works, not saying that I don't think you should get a raise. I do think you should. I'm just
the names out of this.
Yeah, I'm just taking the numbers. This is just the numbers. This is nothing against personalities, people, places, things, etc. Just the numbers. So Public Works Supervisor 2022 Eagle Lake is 4475 to 53,726. Take that divided by 2 is 48,900 decimal point 5. Average Public Works Supervisor for this area is 54,835 to 73,000. So that's, the average is $63,000, $63,990. So that percentage, the percentage would have to be 25% to get you up to the average there.
So something I think you should keep in mind too is that, you know, when you look at these numbers, we're not taking into consideration kind of where employees maybe currently are on the pay scale, how much experience they have. And the other thing I don't like about wage surveys like this, I'll be completely honest, I think they're kind of dangerous in the sense that we're looking at cities in our area and we're kind of going off population, assuming everybody's the same, but in reality, not every city's the same. So I think you kind of just have to look at it and recognize that it is flawed in some of those ways too. It's not a perfect system. So, but yet you also have to realize that, you know, we're competing for talent too. So it's all these factors and kind of just trying to do the best you can. But I think those are great points, but I just wanted to point out too that that's kind of where when talking with the COG, we look at just kind of trying to do something to, get everybody up and heading in the right direction. That makes sense.
So Jennifer, if we have using part-time police, since we talked about that, come in and you guys interview them and we offer them the job, are they automatically, no matter their skill or anything, automatically started at step 1?
Not necessarily, no. That's where the city council always has the right to make those, discretionary determinations. So if we have somebody that comes in and has quite a bit of experience, and by all means, we have the right to recommend, or the staff can, and then also council, you have the ability to hire them at a higher rate than step 1. Yep.
My employees asked me, they didn't come, they asked me to kind of give some input. So I said I would, so I better follow my word. For the part-time police officer, be honest with you, Mapleton's gonna be up to, not that we're Mapleton, but they're gonna be up to like $22 an hour this coming year. I can't compete with that here, being $5 under. I mean, I just can't for the people. And I know that, like, again, Lee Sewer is not the size, but just give you an idea, they're starting at $27 an hour for part-time help. And the full-time officers, they asked me to just ask to be considered that they've gone to school for 2 or 4 years as well for their position. And not that not every position is important, they just wanted to convey that, getting paid $20 an hour when they can go to McDonald's and work third shift and make $21 an hour. They have to work nights, holidays, and weekends here too. So that's their main concerns, and I said I'd bring it up and bring it forward, so I'm done. I'm just bringing it forward.
I think that's a big struggle I think we all have in this, is I think we all know that, in my opinion, we all know that everybody needs to be stepped up quite a bit. From the police force that's boots on the ground to public works, keeping the city looking pretty and mowed and everything that way. It's how can we get it up and then have that baseline where we're not bringing in seasonal people to mow. Yeah, they're just mowing, sitting on a mower, but they're sitting on a mower all day long. And is $12 an hour really worth them doing that when, like you said, you can go flip a burger for $16 an hour starting?
They hire sub-custodians for the school district for $12.50. I think that's less skill than, and I can say that because I'm a sub-custodian.
Right.
I think that's less skill than driving a mower or some power equipment around. Even though, you can drive a riding vacuum, but I think that the, like what John says too, if McDonald's is hiring for $21 an hour and
They're not.
Oh, they're not?
But even take those out.
It's always very, very, very dangerous to start comparing wages of other places. They advertise a lot of things. There's lots of fine print in there. You start at McDonald's, you start at $12.
But I think even taking that out, I think we all agree that we need to bump everybody up. It's to what extent? And then my other question would be too with that is, when I know the conversations were started on it, is where do we need more? I think we talked, police department needed another one, we did public works, we talked about another person in the office helping with permitting and things that way. So being sensitive to that piece, to where we can start factoring that into the budget as well, so we're not getting ourselves in a sticky situation either that way.
Right. Another thing too, I think it's important to keep in mind. We need to get wages to be competitive within market, but you also, I think it's important for everybody to look at. We do have a good health insurance package, and yes, and rates are going up, but they go up everywhere, and we have the city contributes health savings account. So I think we got to kind of look at the big picture on overall benefit package, and I think making a step, the city can't handle, we have to be mindful of our limitations and the tax levy, and I think it's a balance, and so I feel like this is a step in the right direction. Getting a 10% increases versus say a 3% increase is a step in the right direction, and I just ask for employees to be patient, and like you said, it's gonna be a couple of year process, but I think, it's not something that can be changed overnight. It's just gonna be a process, and we have to balance everybody's needs here, so.
Jennifer,
to throw
does
out there.
the wage study, did that take into account benefits?
No, so that's, that is not included with it, it's just simply wages. Yep.
Well, I think that's something
That's a
really
huge-
needs to get looked at.
Yeah, I just asked Mayor Tim over here, I said, does that include the benefits? Because
and
that
that's-
makes the numbers all different.
Yeah, this is just an hourly pay.
This is just hourly rate.
Right, but I think you gotta look at, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and if you wanna get into an in-depth analysis, we're gonna need to hire somebody to do that. This takes a lot of time, and you don't always get all the information back from everybody, and you could take it a step further and then really study each position. Is this job description appropriate for this position? There's a whole bunch of stuff that can be done, and it takes time and expertise as well. So yes, you're right. It's just giving you a snippet. It's not giving you the whole picture.
So I done a lot of salary surveys in the other world, right? So this is obviously a different world. So I think one question is, there's no performance increase portion of increases at all. It looks like it's just step and COLA?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I think to your point, it's interesting to understand, I'm used to not a percentage of budget. I'm used to you have X number of dollars and you move those appropriately. And I've been through a couple of wage studies where we've had to adjust, we've waited too long, to Anthony's question there. We waited too long, so we had to phase in the steps because we couldn't shift at 30%. And that's how far behind we were. So where would we be dollar-wise? We're talking percentages. Dollar-wise, because we've got the levy at $1, so where is it at? We may want to adjust certain, I'm used to midpoint. When you start, you should be at the midpoint between the range. I don't see that the ranges really moves, and I don't understand why, if ranges move, why do you add 2 more steps? If the ranges move, those steps just should be different numbers in the 10 steps with the range moves, not adding steps unless we broaden with the range. We now have a broader range than we had before. So there's just a lot of questions. I think it's more appropriate to take a look at how much dollars we have budgeted and how we can move those around the board to affect some of these. Because it's not normally that it's across the board you have these numbers, especially when you do market surveys, because some ranges move less than others. And to John's point of, did those ranges for part-time police officers move 20% and city clerks move 5%? So, I think there's probably some more, not a lot, because I know you can spend months on this. But maybe not a, maybe one more cut at it to see if we can get some of these other ranges we know need to get a little closer. And then to benefits are personal, right? Myself, I've got a family, so health benefits are important to me. We're hiring single gentleman officers, so health insurance may not be. So, those are all things that are sweeteners of, but they're all personal, right? So I want, my next goal is retirement. So if you added, 6% to my IRA and health insurance is, as old as I am, is getting more important as well. But, I think adding that, knowing that and being able to speak to that as we talk to people or talk to employees that, yeah, we're a couple percentage under, but we're 20% over in benefits. They'll have to make decision what's important to them. Is it more important that I have health insurance that's really good coverage because I have, 3 and a 4-year-old, or my wage is more important because I don't have any kids? And so I think, it's just trade-offs. But this is why I don't do HR. This right here, it's not fun to talk.
So would it help if you could see like each employee and what their, where they're at currently and what their total compensation would be based on the cost of living and would that help?
We can do benefits as a side, but I'd kind of
Sure.
like to see where people are in the range.
Okay, sure.
In
Like
their
each
range,
individual.
Each individual.
Okay,
We
yep.
don't have to name them, but, Right.
Sure.
Right, you did a mid-range, but you may be, 10% into the range instead
Yep.
of mid-range.
Yep.
And are we trying to get you to mid-range with this move or not?
Yeah, and then not knowing where people
Right.
are at on the step
Right.
scale, is the new part-time officer on step
Step 2,
2?
right.
Or is the public works supervisor on step 9 or step 11?
Right.
Future step 11.
Right, and every percentage of something bigger obviously is a bigger dollar number. It's just.
Yeah, and the other thing too,
moving
you want to,
numbers around the board, maybe I don't know,
right.
but
Nope, I can get some more information. I just want to be mindful and not cause morale issues with employees when people start looking at, this is what the Public Works is gonna get, this is what admin might be getting, or, you know what I mean? That's kind of
the
why.
hardest thing about being a public entity.
Yeah.
I didn't have that.
Right,
issue.
right.
That we're moving, help desk 1, 8%, and programmers 2%. I
Right.
didn't have that
Right.
morale issue.
So-
Well, and again, these discussions aren't happening in the private sector.
Right, so we have to.
Well, I'm not getting a 5.9% increase in my pay because of cost of living. I mean, that's always the difficult part that I have on my end, is that the public sector and the private sector are two different things. And,
Definitely have to be
we've
mindful
already,
of that.
we've already done one of these adjustments where it was a drastic pay increase. And so my wonder is, how does Eagle Lake get that far down or off of the average? What are other communities doing? How are they paying so much? Are they cutting benefits to pay more hourly?
I think other communities, like other businesses, manage that year over year instead of, what it looks like we haven't done anything between the last survey and now. We didn't make some adjustments along the way, so we've got this cliff that we gotta jump over. And if we don't do anything in the next year or two and have a plan as of how to keep people moving through the ranges, then you always hit these cliffs every 5 years or so.
And I don't believe there should be any morale issues. I mean, I honestly think if there's a morale issue because of pay, now we've got a real serious problem, because, again, in the private sector, there's not discussions about this going on. And that's always been my struggle. I've done this for 20 years. I believe we should take care of our employees, and I think we have. When we do a wage survey and we say everything's all off, that means we haven't taken care of our people. So that's an admission if we're saying we haven't done a good job taking care of people. That's what this says to me. And I'm not so sure that that's the truth. And none of the employees may, may hate me for that, but that, again, is my opinion, so.
Well, not to interrupt you, Mayor, but I could see if the COG would want to come in, and then that you could hear it from somebody outside, from a city employee. I'm just kind of relaying the information from the information that was collected and analyzed, but I sure could have somebody come to the
No, and
upcoming meeting
I
too
think-
and talk about.
We understand, I think as a council, I think we understand what we have in front of us. Now it's just a matter of how do we disseminate this? Where do we go? What is the appropriate, situation? This whole cost of living increase thing really throws this skew in the whole thing. So if we're giving a 5.9% increase and other communities are, we're still behind. So, I don't know where that falls in, but
And I don't think that many cities are doing as high of a cost of living. I've only seen one other city that I saw do a survey with the league on cost of living being that high, because sometimes cities will take an average. They've got union agreements. And last year, the city, it was 0.7%, and so that's what the city did. So, some cities may just average, 2% each year or 2.5%, and a lot of it's subject to their negotiations with the different, unions and the contracts they set. But given that the city, in our situation, that 5.9% is actually going to help bring us up.
right.
Like the
yeah,
mayor's
yeah.
saying, compared to. So, I don't think every other city is doing a 5.9% cost of living. Granted, I haven't surveyed everybody, but I think probably more of the average is probably that 2.5–3%.
And I think
So,
I've experienced that we've moved the ranges and brought everybody up to the minimum range and didn't do anything about moving them off the bottom. And then 5 years down the road, we had to do that same thing because we didn't manage those two.
Right.
That growth, knowing that it's coming, so. And we've also, done things in, it's always the private sector that we've had to break out certain job descriptions to say, those are moving faster than everybody else, so how do we move those? And, those discussions probably should have happened before we set the levy, I would say.
Right. When we,
But we didn't have this then, but.
when we set this 20 years ago, these pay grades, and, I know this has been kind of reviewed. Is there a review of the pay grades, Jennifer, that can be done? I know because different job classifications had similar, I don't know what you want to call it, work responsibility is how we set these grades. Are we still in line there? Has any of that changed? And Carrie, you might know some of that. Job classification studies.
You're talking like pay equity?
Yeah.
I don't know if the point values have changed for job duties. I don't know that.
Is that a way that we could be falling behind, falling short with any of that?
I don't think so. I think maybe the question you're getting at would be more along those lines of kind of if we would do a compensation study, and that's what a consultant would look at,
Right.
making sure that that's kind of where I feel like your question's going, Mayor, just because I've worked in other cities where we did a compensation study, and that was some of the stuff we adjusted. But
The compensation study would see where your ranges are, and then, how they level out, right? So,
And I think we've kind of gathered that with this,
yeah.
with the averages for the communities around us, is really kind of done that. So I don't know that we would need to do anything further with, a full-blown study or anything like that.
I can give you a history of like even our public works department, how that's gone about.
Brian, do you want to talk with maybe just go up there with that?
So I've been here 29 years, so it's changed
You
a
remember
lot.
when the chart was formed, right?
Yeah, and so when they started that, so like for Public Works, they had that so Rick and I, we were on the pay scale. Well, we got to the top of the scale at number 10, and then we just got our cost of living raises. We didn't get the other raise. So we were on that, we were off the scale, so we didn't get a raise. So I didn't get a raise for 15 years, basically, of the cost of living. So that's how Public Works got so far behind. And then like when Garrett came up with the supervisor, well, I was the supervisor back then. So then when Andrew came on to be that, they just used that old system of the scale, and then too, like the accountability for experience and stuff like that. He started out at step 1, but he had his water license, his sewer license, his CDL license, and all that stuff. That, I thought, well, maybe he should get a better grade for that too, but that wasn't in the deals either. And also when I came on to director, I started at step 1. And at that time I had 25 years experience, and that's just, a little history of how a department or how wages can get behind. So like some years we didn't even get a cost of living raise, and sometimes it was 1%, it was real low and stuff. So that's how that's so low gets, you just get pushed back. And then, so then they had the idea of taking 2 off the bottom and adding 2 on the end. Well, that was fine for all the other employees except for Rick and I, because we were already off the scale. So all the other employees, they kept getting more of a raise, you know, more every year. And then some didn't, but, you know, it's, you know, I don't wanna hear the morale thing and stuff like that. It's fine, you know. I love my job, I love coming to work, you know, so it's just, you know, if everybody can be fair on everything. But that's how some of the wages get so messed up, is
Yep.
somebody's gotta look at it every year and adjust it and be fair about it.
Well, that's the market,
Yeah.
you know. Many years I never got raises too,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, and
But I
that's
mean-
just the way it is. I don't get a chart like this
Yeah.
to say,
But,
hey, I'm
but other
gonna get a
employees,
raise.
but other employees were though, is what I'm saying.
Right,
You
right.
know.
Yeah, and I think we've had conversations about that before where, what, you know, because I remember putting this chart together.
Yep.
The 10 years or 10 steps, I'm not a HR person.
Yeah.
There were two of us that did this, and I remember we said, well, that sounds good, you know, but maybe, and I don't know, John, with what you've done, are there 20-step
No, it's.
charts?
No, it's.
Or it is
What
the,
happens is the step, there's 10 steps potentially, but that range that the steps are in moves up, you know, every year.
Needs
every
a change
5 years.
instead of,
So-
yeah.
So step one used to be $10 an
Yeah.
hour. Now step one is $15 an hour because the range is moved. The steps are still.
Yeah, you
percentage of-
take two off and add two on the back.
right, which we tried to do, I think, at one point, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, no,
right.
I've never worked in an area that had steps, you know, it just, it's the, you know, the median is where, you know, you should be, with 5 years of experience, you should be at the middle of the range because that's where you're most valuable, because you know your job, you're doing your job well, and you're efficient at it, and then you kind of slow down as you, because the incremental, I hate to say this, the incremental value of the employee goes, you know, doesn't grow as fast, you know, after that. But the first 5 years, your incremental value is growing a lot, because you're learning new things and learning how to be proficient at your job. After 30 years, you should know everything, right, Brian?
Yep.
So it's the ranges, what I've seen in the past is the ranges become stagnant and everybody bounces up against the top. And then that's a problem, or as you bring people in and you're bringing them in at the bottom, and the ranges move, and then you know, everybody's left behind. So it's just something that has to be managed, unfortunately, you know, more often. You know, but staff-wise, you know, that's why we don't have an HR department that's responsible for that.
So, are there any other questions from the council in regard to the wage survey results? I don't think we need to take any action tonight, but this will be part of kind of our budget discussions moving forward.
Yes, and Mayor, could I just get some clarification? I've started writing down kind of the things that you guys want for the next meeting, so, you want to see where every employee is at, and where they will be with the proposed increases. And then, was there anything else I'm missing that you would ask for? There was something else.
Yeah, it was just benefits, but I don't know how you can, at this point, gather up, you know, what other communities are doing for benefit packages and things like that. I mean, that just has to be what we determine as a council, you know, to offer. You know, that could certainly be, you know, another place that we look at to provide value to the employees is to, because I think we do a 75-25 split on health insurance.
Yep.
You know, and so
Yep, and-
there have been times where I think the city has covered 100% of employee health insurance, and so we've kind of gone back and forth with the market on that. You know, that could certainly be a place to,
So we could be conceivably better in benefits here in Eagle Lake than, say, Janesville or
right.
Lesueur or City of Faribault.
So I just want to let you guys know to go on the record too, that I appreciate everything you guys do, and I'm very happy with my job, and I understand where you guys, I'm not staying here for the money. I enjoy the community, and I like being able to go to the grocery store and be called by name, and people know me, and I just want to say I appreciate everything you guys do as well.
Anything else?
And I truly don't think that the staff we have, whether it's the police officers, public works, or in-store, or in-office staff, are here for making sure they're getting that top dollar, but they wanna feel like they're not being disrespected in the sense that we're not even, their top range isn't even in the average range. And that's where it's disappointing to, like me, and I'm glad we're taking these steps and hope that all the employees do understand that it's not a quick 6-month changeover, but get that on paper plan so that this year this is what we'll do, next year is to work into that and try not to get ourselves in this position again that's uncomfortable for everybody, but also such a big change that needs to happen. Being able to be competitive for officers or public works staff where we're not $10 an hour difference. I mean, that's crazy to me. I mean, that's a no-brainer that you wouldn't even apply to Eagle Lake if that was the difference. So,
Unless you got benefits.
right. And some of the younger people, like you guys said, I have an employee that she wants more money and doesn't want health insurance because she's by herself. So it's sometimes is the hourly rate versus the insurance. So if the city can be somewhat flexible on a person-to-person basis, and I don't know if that's the case or not, but
I
I'd
don't
rather
think
have less pay and benefits paid.
We don't have the ability to be real flexible that way, do we?
Okay.
The number of participants in health insurance is driving probably a lot of
Yeah.
that number.
But I just want to, go on the record too, saying that I appreciate everybody that is on Eagle Lake payroll and what you guys have done, knowing that pretty much everybody is below range substantially. And then I think we're all working hard to get people where they should be.
Yeah, turnover costs. It costs a lot in some areas, more areas than others.
So I appreciate you all.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, moving forward, again, as Jennifer said in her recommendation, this is built into what we've got currently in the budget for the recommendation, so that we'll have to approve. Is that our next meeting, the December
Yes.
meeting?
Yes. Yep.
So that, we'll take this up again. So if there's anything that anyone has questions on, if Jennifer gets us some additional information, then we can include this in the budget for next year, so. So then related is item number 2, health insurance rates.
All right, so those, the new rates were received here, and they've been included in the updated budget. Our increase equates to approximately 10% over the 2021 rate. And I just want to note that sometimes questions come up about how our rates are determined. The city's rates are not based on health history because we're a small group. And Carrie and I did meet with our agent, Todd Zimmerman. We talked about, should we be looking at other plans? What other kind of increases are you seeing for other plans? And basically, after he did his analysis, it was very little cost savings that we would receive if we were to switch plans, and probably actually go backwards on some of the positives with our plan as far as prescriptions and other coverages. So that's where we're at with that. But at any time, we can always work with the agent, and it can kind of get to be a little bit cumbersome if you don't have some parameters, because you can go all over the place as far as looking at health insurance plans. But I think he kind of knows what we're looking for, and so this is kind of what we have right now, so.
Jennifer, are we pooled with other communities, or are we standalone?
So,
So there's no co-op?
we're not a co-op, nope, I've been part of that in another city. I know Eagle Lake has been a part of that too in the past, and I can't remember if the reason why it just ended up not being favorable, so that's something we could always look at going back into too. Okay.
We were in the co-op and we got out of it because of, when you're in the co-op, you are rated on your usage, your claim usage, and it was
Being the
costing
right
us a
co-op.
lot more.
So we're being rated better now than we were.
But maybe something we could sure look at maybe next year, if it's something we should start looking at early,
I would
just to
assume that's
see.
something the agent would do for us.
Right,
Just,
yeah.
you know,
Well, I guess my takeaway, and Carrie was at that meeting too, was that based on, our size, kind of what we're looking for in a plan, that what we have is probably the best he could find us. That was my takeaway, so.
And Jennifer, do the employees, are there any concerns with the employees with what plans they're on, where they can go, things like that? Cause I know that's, for ours anyways, it's like, yeah, you're on a great plan, but you can't go to the hospital here.
Yep, no, we've got good coverage. We haven't had a sit-down meeting with the agent and employees, and we sure can do that. But as far as like employees coming to me with concerns, I haven't personally received them, but we should have. I mean, you should be able to pretty much go anywhere in Minnesota and have coverage, and
Okay.
That's why rates are so low, there's no place to utilization
So-
rates.
but I think what we'll probably do is just have the agent come in and sit down with the employees and kind of talk about some of their questions, and maybe if there's concerns, we could look at making some changes the following year.
So deductibles or copays, did any of that change to keep the number so that it all stayed the same?
I thought something changed. Nothing, did nothing? It stayed the same. Maybe it was last year. There was a little bit, last year. Okay, yeah. And don't ask me too many health insurance questions because I got that file in my office. So don't start quizzing me. No, I can always get you that information. So that's where we're at with that. And then what's the other item? And then if it's okay, I could move on to the pricing for website redesign. We've been having some issues with our website. When you want to update it, there's certain limitations because it's basically kind of obsolete. And so in working with Greg with Webison, he had provided some pricing if we wanted to do a website redesign. So it's not something, I guess, that was plugged into the preliminary budget. We'd have to just kind of find something in the budget and take it out of that. But his proposal was $4,500, and it would be just a redesign, so we'd have a newer platform and not have the limitations we have right now, and it'd be better security. We've had some issues with our website going down too, and I think that's directly related to that. So something we can talk about, and I'm not asking you for your permission tonight. I just want to let you know that's something we have pricing for, and as we work through the 22 budget, I think we're gonna need to look at trying to swap that out for something else in the budget to get that updated, so. And it would be a process. We'd have to have the front office staff working with the website host to get the information and do updates. This would be an opportune time to change some of the stuff, especially on that front page when you come to our website. I think we've had the same stuff on there now for probably 2016 or, I don't know, 2017, so. And then moving on, then Park Pavilion, there's been a lot of discussion about we gotta get something for 2022. We had a park board meeting recently, and so we're kind of getting geared up to get some more pricing. Public Works Director Brian Gettle is working on getting some more bids. I think he reached out to maybe 3 people or a couple people, or I can't remember how many. Okay.
is there any thought of like a concession stand area? You know,
Yeah, the second pavilion, that has kind of a concession stand type in it, but it's not locked off. We talked too about, as much as that gets used, maybe the Pepsi concession stand wagon would be the best, like they used to bring down. We used to bring that down before, and before that, we used to have our old warming house that we pulled over for a concession stand, but it's something that wouldn't get, I don't think,
Yeah.
used.
So think of it more of a walled-in area for potlucks, more so, with a bar and plug-ins for crock pots and stuff. Less concession, but can be utilized in multiple ways.
And it would break.
Yeah.
So it'd be more of a family concession, potluck type of thing.
Graduation parties.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest complaint that I heard with the old pavilion, and I even witnessed when we did park events down there, is you were always having rocks on your plates and your napkins and stuff to hold things down, so having it more welcoming. But I think some of the conversations come back up too. We're not only making sure things are moving on it, but also looking at funding on it, and what funding sources we can have, because it's not a $10,000 rebuild, and where we would want to be, and looking at the fire department on, making the request for a donation from them, and there was conversation from a fire department member asking where we were at with the pavilion, because they were wanting to maybe make a donation to the pavilion too, but needs to see movement happening to be able to do that, so, it kind of gives you some ammunition when people are noticing it, but also wanting to contribute to it as well.
Well, I think as we, move forward budgeting wise, if we can get some, numbers as you've been working on, Brian, and, we have what we'll say is, a balanced budget except for, our expenditures and capital outlay. If we have a surplus of dollars, maybe we can look at bumping up the parks amount for this upcoming year, specifically for the pavilion, to get that project done, so I think we'd have to look at that next month as we finalize the budget. So Jennifer, then you've got your last handout here too.
Yep, so the change I made in there reflects the updated health insurance numbers. And although we had a 10% increase, we might have some changes with employees and what they're signing up for. And so you'll see our, planned deficit spending went down very small. So we're still, had we not had capital outlay expenditures in the budget, we would be balanced, but for that, so that's why we have that planned deficit spending, and we're at $40,261. So, and it just shows the updated general fund revenues and general fund expenditures. But nothing changes with the total tax levy or that 10%, that remains the same.
So for that, in my mind, we've got $60,000 of surplus in the general fund, outside of the planned capital outlay. Would that be how you would see that then as well, Jennifer? If we had a difference of 40,000, we have $109,000 of capital outlay. To me, that's our ability to increase parks from that 60,000. That would be surplus revenue, so. Okay, and I jumped over one last one. I think Jennifer, you had about the recovery plan funding.
So I did get an email back from the auditor since I sent this out. I have not had a chance to go through all of her information, so I will plan to add this onto the December 6th agenda and give you an update on the information I got back on that. And then coincidentally, talking about ARPA funding, Carrie just notified me today, we got another $5,000 in. They don't give you any explanation, so I don't know if it's like another city or people have not requested the funds and now they're dispersing them. I'll get more information on that, so. But hey, we got $5,000 more in ARPA funds, so
I'll ask a question, just
just take it.
All right, anything else?
I just have a question. Have we heard anything more about, I've had some people asking me about the motorsports park. Has there any, do we know anything really about that, or is it just?
Same
is
holding
what-
pattern.
It just is what it is.
Yep, they're still going through that process. It could ramp up, I guess, at any time, but I haven't got any word that they're any further or any farther behind, so that's where I'm at. Or that's the information I have to share.
I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.
Don't you have seat heaters? You got a brand new truck. No, I'm just.
Grandpa takes them